Hello all, and I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I am pissed. I just got finished watching a video with Jorge Ramos, that idiot who calls himself a fucking reporter, who is just some kind of fucking activist, arguing with a very intelligent guy about immigration, race, and essentially why it's perfectly okay for everybody who wants to go into America to go into America. America is essentially up for grabs, but every other country has a 100% right to legislate who can come in and who can't. Now, this is fucking ridiculous to me. This is what I want to talk about, this idea that because America has some kind of unique history as a nation of immigrants, this is the argument and lie that the left will automatically go to when you start talking about other countries that want to control who comes into their country. Like, oh, well, these people were there since the beginning of fucking time. So it's okay for them to say who can and can't come in because they didn't steal the land. What you're essentially saying when you say that America doesn't have the right to decide who can come in and who can come out, but Mexico does and Guatemala does and all Haiti does, every other fucking country out there has that right, but you don't. What you're saying is that America is by its very nature an illegitimate country. It is illegitimate, it is not valid, it's not real, it's not recognized as a country, it doesn't exist as a country. So anybody and everybody can come in, grab whatever the fuck they want, because it's not a real country. America's not real because it was made by immigrants. Oh, that's the other argument, that because it was made by immigrants, that it would be hypocritical of us to deny these people access now. I mean, hey, we were all immigrants, right? So, you know, we can't deny other people, but Mexicans aren't all immigrants. This argument shows a level of stupidity I can't possibly imagine. But this is the majority of people. Average intelligence is stupidity, clearly. Well, let's take a closer look at this to elucidate you morons out there who don't understand how this fucking works. Everybody on the fucking planet is an immigrant, you morons. The only difference is time scale, okay? The only difference is time scale, all right? Every motherfucking person on the planet has displaced every other motherfucking person. Everybody's moved around. Everybody's traveled. Everybody has ping-ponged between different places. There have been wars. There have been resettlements. People have nomadically moved, immigrated to every part of this fucking country, and at one time or another killed each other and taken each other's land. Do you know what that means? I mean, let's look at in Mexico, for example. How many of the people in Mexico are from Spain originally? How many were originally Aztecs or Mayans or whatever hill tribes or you know, whatever lowland villagers? How many of them motherfuckers were actually born there? How many of them motherfuckers actually came from Spain when Spain took over the area of Mexico and made it a colony? How many? Tell me how many. And how many of those Aztecs and Mayans survivors were actually people who evolved and developed in certain areas of Mexico where they now live, but their ancestors didn't used to live? And how many of them conquered and took over certain areas of the country and then were reconquered again? How many of these people have claims on land in Mexico now that is owned by somebody else, who was taken over by somebody else, and now a different ethnic group lives there? Does that mean, but that's, by the way, that would be lots. That would be the whole goddamn country has been traded back and forth. So, doesn't that mean now that Mexico is up for fucking grabs? Because by the definition of the leftist morons like Jorge Ramos, now it's a country of immigrants. They're all immigrants, for God's sake. Especially because the Spanish are there. The Spanish came in. They took over the country. They made it a multicultural country. Spain was a fucking colony, just like Mexico was a Spanish colony, just like the Americas were a European colony with multiple nations, including Spain, having migrated there and settled citizens there. So, hello? Mexico is a country of immigrants too! It's just that the migrant, the native population, is simply that more of those happen to have survived than ours. But that's irrelevant because, hello, it's a country of immigrants. I would wager that a large percentage of Mexico's population are Spanish in ancestry. And they speak Spanish too. So what is Jorge Ramos going on about how Mexico's not a country of immigrants? Is he trying to argue that somehow the native population are in control, so it's still their country and still tied to their ancestry that's been there longer than we were in America? Really? Okay. So, who says? Who says it's not the Spanish? Let's look at the members of government and test their DNA and see how many of them are Spanish and how many of them are native-born Mexicans. And we'll see. We'll see if he's right or not. And if a large majority of them are Spanish in ancestry, then he's wrong. Then that means the Spanish are running the country. You see, this is where Jorge Ramos becomes he's already a moron. This is where he shows what a moron he is. He's a stupid idiot. He is equating whoever's in charge right now as the people who essentially are the migrants. Okay. We're the because we are migrants and we are running the country. That now this is somehow, we are the migrants. We are now the ones running the country. We came in, we took over, so we're illegitimate. And so since we did that, other people can do that. But my own country, which is pretty much the same goddamn way in many ways, Spanish came in, Spanish took over. They're in a lot of positions of power. Then they left, just like the English left us. And now we are our own sovereign nation. But we're somehow different because more of the native population survived. And that's who's really running the show now, even though there were a lot of Spanish that lived there and they interbred, intermarried. So essentially the country is run by a lot of Spanish people, essentially. It's no different. It's not that much different, honestly. But his country is a country of immigrants because a large percentage of his population have ancestry from Spain. So his country is a country of immigrants too. So it should be up for grabs as well. But he would say, oh, no, that's not the same thing. Yeah, but he would give you no arguments to counter that. It's just saying, no, it's not the same thing with his fake accent. The guy, if you were to listen to this motherfucking Jorge Ramos guy, outside of a TV studio with no TV camera, he sounds just like everybody else. But when he's in front of a camera, he like, I'm not sure, I do not agree with you. He fakes this very thick Mexican accent. I mean, this guy is such a fucking phony. And for him to parade around as a fucking journalist is a joke, an absolute joke. And then he argues with you that America does not have the same right to essentially decide who can come in and out because we are a nation of immigrants. And that's even not true. And because he's not even saying we're a nation of conquerors. He's focusing only on the fact that we're immigrants. But his whole goddamn country is people with a large percentage of people who are immigrants, who come from immigrants. And that's what he's really talking about. Because a large percentage of the American population, for God's sake, are European in ancestry and was built by these people. And the same is for fucking Mexico. A large percentage of their population is of Spanish ancestry and it was built by those people. He's a fucking hypocrite. What is he talking about? He's trying to make it sound like America is some kind of special case, so it's okay to invade there as a quote-unquote immigrant when you're really an invader and say it's okay because we are some unique case. We are not a unique case. The whole goddamn planet are immigrants. Remove the conqueror part because he's just focusing on the immigrant part to justify people illegally going to America and settling there because it's okay because it's been done before. It was done in Spain too, you idiot! And it's been done in every other fucking country in the world. Every country. What do you think? People just popped up like trees everywhere? Jorge Ramos? We evolved in one specific area, and then we branched out and we moved. And then our ancient ancestors fought each other for resources, and more people branched out and moved, and then they took over certain territory. You know what that means? It means that every motherfucking country on the planet is an immigrant country, you boob. And your arguments would have to... the only way that his arguments about Mexico and other countries being somehow immune, non-white countries, of course, with poor people who want to go to white countries so they can get free shit. The only way that his arguments will hold any water is if the people in his country evolved there, grew there, and have always been there. Now that they would definitely be homegrown Mexicans. But they're not. They're not. Even the Native Americans in America came from Asia and Africa originally. They didn't come. They didn't come from America. People didn't evolve in the Americas. Evolved in Africa and Europe. They didn't evolve in Mexico. Okay? So his people are also immigrants. It's just a matter of time scale that we immigrated in a more recent era than his people. But so what? And by the way, that's not even true! Because the majority of fucking Mexicans in Mexico have Spanish ancestry. So that's not even true! So that's a lie too! Absurdity! The majority of his people's ancestry is from around the same time as Christopher Columbus. He found America. And not too long after that, the Spanish found Mexico and South America. So, what the hell is he talking about? In fact, the truth of the matter is that Americans predate his fucking country. Yeah. And it was Spain that found America also. Christopher Columbus, yeah. And not only that, I mean, 1490, so 1492, Christopher Columbus discovers America. But fucking A, the Vikings, for God's sake, found America long before Christopher Columbus. They found log houses in territories in America that proved the Vikings were here long before Christopher Columbus. So if it's a matter of time scale, white people had been settling in America long before the Spanish made their way to South America and Mexican countries into Mexico, found their way into Mexico. So when you really think about it, we have a longer running claim. Oh, but of course, he wants you to rely on your ignorance of history. And Mexico is just Mexicans, and they've been there forever. They didn't immigrate from anywhere, like Africa and Europe, like every motherfucking other person in the world. You moron. Fucking America. Fucking A. Human beings did not evolve in Mexico, you idiot. Your whole country are also immigrants, you fool. That they might predate, some of them, because the majority of your people have Spanish ancestry, because so many fucking Spanish people immigrated to your country and intermarried. Truth of the matter is, it'd be difficult to find somebody in your country that didn't have Spanish ancestry. So you're a nation of immigrants too, with less history than America, you boob. Jorge fucking Ramos. This guy is such a moron. He calls himself an American. I'm a Mexican-American, whatever the fuck that is. You're either an American or you're a Mexican, pal. He's clearly a Mexican first. I don't think he's American at all. This we're a nation of immigrants argument is such horse shit. It's horse shit. It's just about time scale. That's it. If it happened more recently, then it has more validity as an argument than if it happened a long time ago. All right, let's look at that argument. Let's look at it, okay? So let's go back to 1492. Let's make that the banner moment, all right? So 1500, 2000, 2017, 92, so you get 8, and then 17. So 525 years since white people found the Americas. Okay. I think that's a pretty long fucking time. Now, America might have been founded as a nation in the 1700s, but late 1700s, but fucking A. Hello, we were there a hell of a lot longer than that. I think those years should count as well. And to say that we don't have some long history of being there, and so it's not valid to no longer call us immigrants, is absurd. And if the argument is only about time scale, okay, then it applies to Mexico as well, because they're mostly Spanish people, and it especially applies to Canada. French mainly settled Canada, after we settled the Americas. So yeah. They're a nation of immigrants too, and of course they let people in en masse. They just threw the doors, the gates open, let every motherfucker in that wants to come in. But this argument that America is a nation of immigrants is a lie. It's not true. We're not a nation of immigrants, and we have to first of all look at this. This isn't even a valid argument, because this is giving validity to an argument that shouldn't have any validity. This argument holds no water, because first, you have to define what actually makes a country. I mean, let's talk about that. What actually makes a country, huh? Is it just people are living there? No, it is not. There was no country before we got there, okay? Now, the people like Jorge Ramos like to argue that because there were Native Americans there, that means there was a country there and we displaced them, so we're immigrants. So is that what makes an immigrant? The displacement of a native people. So if there hadn't been anyone here, we wouldn't have stolen the land. Then we could say, okay, anybody who we can control who comes in and out. No, we can't do that. So even if there was nobody here and we didn't steal the land from anybody, which is bullshit, by the way, but even if we didn't steal the land, we wouldn't have a right to control who comes in. Well, then. But what's your argument for Mexico then? Spain came in and stole your land, interbred with your people, then left. I mean, we drove them out through war. They drove them out through sheer attrition. The Spanish Empire couldn't afford to maintain the colony anymore, and they left. Okay? But you were still controlled by Spain for hundreds of years, and they had a unique and powerful role in shaping your culture and your history, and a large percentage of your population, has Spanish ancestry, just like America. You see, these arguments are red herrings because they are built on false arguments. They are built on false premises that a country is just land. Right. So what makes a country? Well, people go in, they develop the land, they make it productive, they build things on the land, tear down trees, build crops, farm. So these are things that create ownership. There's the idea of ownership through development. So when the settlers first came to America, there was nothing there. They took the land, they developed it, they built on it. Native Americans never did any of that. Native Americans were nomads, okay? You have to understand, you see all of these premises about we're a nation of immigrants and we stole the country, that's why we're a nation of immigrants. And by the way, just saying that means that he's stealing the country too. That's his fucking goal, to steal the country. He's telling you his goal. He's telling you his motivations are to steal the fucking country. If they're not, why would he keep saying we stole the country? So it's okay for him to come in because we did it. We did what? You stole the country. But that's what you're doing then. Why don't people have brains to see this shit? But back to what I was saying, the idea of property rights, of ownership, comes in when you create something, okay? Now you could argue that nobody could own land. It's like a fleas arguing about who owns the dog they live on. But honestly, let's not get into that leftist nonsense, hippie bullshit. You can own land, okay? Of course, today, all the land in America has been already claimed and seized, developed, and then sold and resold, and then, so, now you have to buy it. But back then, nobody owned it. You see, to own land back then and to establish a first owner. Okay, so for land to be owned, there must be a first owner, okay? So that first owner can then sell it to somebody else, and then they can sell it to somebody else. But for it to be sold, someone has to first own it. Now, my contention is that and this is the contention of pretty much everybody who has a brain, is that the Native Americans did not own the land in America. They didn't own it because they didn't set up shop for any period of time. You see what I'm saying? No. The Native Americans were nomads. They traveled around on foot until horses were introduced to them. Okay? Until we got there, they didn't have horses, all right? They were nomads. They traveled around on foot from place to place. They didn't set up shop anywhere permanently. Now, you're going to tell me that somebody who has developed the land nil, they didn't build. They are nomads. They traveled around on foot. They killed buffalo. They killed deer. The only things that they produced were hides for their teepees, stone arrowheads because they were so primitive they didn't have the technology to create metal, and bows and hide clothing for themselves and dried meat. They didn't produce permanent anything. Now, permanence is what implies ownership. You have to go in and claim the land. The only way to do that is to actually develop it, because land just sitting there isn't very productive. I mean, unless you are a nation of hunter-gatherers, okay, that are just traveling around nomadically, it's not productive at all. And I think we could definitely agree that white people and white Americans, the country was 90% white until 1965, that we are really, really, really good at being productive. Our population soared, and we saw the most prosperity of any race in history because of these principles: ownership, private property, developing the land, using the land for something more than just to be something to look at. We built houses. We built roads, okay? We cleared the land and created farms that provided more food than anybody could possibly imagine. These are extremely good things, extremely beneficial for human beings and very productive. And these things are what imply and indicate ownership. And these things are the things that make that land yours. Not because you were running around on it hunting a fucking wolf or deer or buffalo. That's not ownership. You didn't own the land. It wasn't yours. Okay? We came in, we made use of what you essentially had been just running around on and killing animals. Might sound harsh, but it's true. So don't tell me that we stole the land. There was nothing to steal. This is, he says America's up for grabs now. No. It's not the same situation. He's conflating two different time periods and wanting you to believe. He's being very, very intellectually dishonest in that he wants you to believe that what happened back in 1492 and what happened in the preceding years up until now, well, up until essentially we became a nation and, developed the West, that those situations are exactly the same as what we're dealing with now in the present. It's not even close. When we got here, there was nothing here. And we created everything. We developed the land and made it into a productive place. We developed the culture that exists on that land. We developed not only the buildings, but the institutions that made the civilization that we created possible. So we're not just talking about the land that nobody owned before we got here. We're talking about the civilization we created, irrelevant of the land. That we created, that we made. It's ours, and just as valid as your shitty hellhole that is Mexico, which, by the way, is not so great because you all want to move to America. But keep your shitty, crappy cultures that are a mess and have turned your country into a hellhole. But you think are so great you want to bring with you because your IQs are so low, you don't realize that those cultures are the very reason that your home country is a shithole. So people, whenever you're some dumbass leftist tell you that, oh, America's a nation of immigrants, that's why they have to accept everybody, you tell them, no, every goddamn country on earth is a nation of immigrants. Every single person on earth immigrated from fucking Africa and Europe, and those places are probably the only ones on earth where the people can actually claim to be native born and it be true. But even then, many of these people, in fact, been 7.5 million years since man started moving around and migrating, and in really evolving more into what we are today, where he really started evolving and left the home country and started to migrate out on foot, which took a long fucking time. And he evolved and changed depending on the changing environments he was in, which why we have the different races we have now. And that level of travel and moving about tells you that nobody is a native-born person. Mexicans are not native-born. They have no more right to control the immigration in their own countries than America does, going by Jorge Ramos' arguments, because they're all immigrants, just like the Americans. It's just that some of them might predate them, but not really, because their whole goddamn country, almost everybody, if not everyone, has some kind of Spanish ancestry. And considering how long the Spanish were there, how many immigrated, and the amount of interbreeding that went on, I don't think he can claim that Mexicans are native-born, so they have a right to control their borders, but Americans are not native-born, so they don't have the right. We're all immigrants, you moron, and America wasn't even a country before we got there. We made it into a country. Countries are created. They're not just some, piece of land. They have governments. The friggin' Indians, for God's sake, there were hundreds of tribes, by the way, and they slaughtered and killed each other and stole the land from each other. It was all stolen property before we even got there. But his clean hands narrative somehow implies that the Indians were just roaming around for 10,000 years on the same piece of land, the same Indians, and they all lived in peace. That's horseshit! Total horseshit! And by the way, when you find stolen property now, what do? You return it to the owner. What if the owner's long dead? Like the original owners, because if you go back 10, 11,000 years to when the Indians first showed up in North America, hello, all them motherfuckers are dead. And they all fought each other and stole the land from each other and stole the land from each other again. So who actually among all those people that this land was traded between, who has claim? Nobody! Except the person who actually took the land and did something with it and built something on it and developed it and made it productive. Out of all those people, the person who has the greatest claim are the white people who came. Because the land was stolen before they even got there. It was stolen property before then. But the owner was already dead. And at that time, it was up for grabs because the Indians that had fucking stolen it from other Indians were running around on it, hunting buffalo for hides, and they essentially did nothing to develop the land. And we developed it. We built on it. We created a country on it. We created a system of civil law and criminal law and rights. And we made the greatest country in the world. We made it. And it's more than the land now. And of course, the only way that you could disagree with that premise is if you do not believe in property rights, if you're a communist, if you're a leftist, and you disagree with the whole concept of how property is defined, well then you would not accept that narrative. You would not accept what I'm saying right now, because it flies in the face of your beliefs, obviously, that America should somehow be up for grabs now, just like it was up for grabs 525 years ago. It's not the same time, not the same situation, and not the same context. Which is one reason the left wants you to believe that context is never important. Because if you take the context of arguments into consideration, then it would disprove many of their arguments. So context can't, no. Context hurts them. It doesn't help them because everything is open to interpretation the way they look at the world. If there's context, things can be defined. Things can be clearly defined. Things can be clearly seen as right or wrong. They don't like that. They like things to be muddied and obscure so they can confuse people and do whatever the hell they want in the meantime. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.